There is a man aboard the Via Oceanus who has never, in 40 years of marriage, met a customs checkpoint he didn't negotiate. Today, in St. Thomas, the checkpoint is going to negotiate back. Friends, a reminder. Somewhere around the second week of this voyage, the company of Table 7 discovered that one member had boarded the Via Oceanus with a quantity of cured Italian meats that the ship's manifest did not precisely reflect. Sal DeLuca of Hoboken, New Jersey, retired deli man, husband, citizen of the world, and the finest unpaid ambassador Italian salami has ever had, is a man who considers the smuggling of quality provisions a form of love. The ship has since made its way through the Caribbean, with a brief and beautiful stop in San Juan and a very interesting evening at the Casino Royale. This morning, the Via Oceanus is docked at Charlotte Amalie, St. Thomas, a harbor of pastel rooftops and impossible turquoise water. And Sal DeLuca, who did his research, has already located the market. The morning had arrived warm and clear, with the particular quality of Caribbean light that makes everything look like a place you already wish you lived. The Via Oceanus had made the overnight run from open water to St. Thomas without incident, docking at Charlotte Amalie just before 8, and the harbor outside the portholes was the sort of deep turquoise that made even Walter Whitfield stop writing on a cocktail napkin for a moment and simply look at it. Table 7 had reconvened at breakfast with the energy of people who have a port day ahead and mean to use it. Antonio had arranged a slightly more elaborate fruit arrangement than usual, which said in fruit what words would have been unnecessary to say.
I'll tell you exactly what I'm doing today. There is a market in Charlotte Amalie. I have the name, I have the street, I have the address written here, where a vendor imports directly from Calabria. Not Genoa, not Milano, Calabria. The old way, the proper dry cure. I'm getting the nduja. I'm getting the soppressata if they have it. Possibly a small wheel of pecorino if the price is right.
Define small wheel.
Manageable.
Last time, manageable required a borrowed bag and a customs declaration.
We are in a duty-free port, Connie. Today I am, technically, legitimate.
I want to see that fort. The one above the harbor. Been there since 1671. I like old things built to last.
I'm aware of your feelings about durable construction, Buck.
The island is approximately 12 miles by 7. Volcanic in origin, peak elevation 1,550 feet. The harbor has been in continuous commercial operation since.
Walter, we're not going to memorize it.
I'm not memorizing, I'm orienting.
Connie DeLuca, beneath the cover of pouring herself a second coffee, leaned 2 inches toward Buck Calhoun and said something at a volume that reached Buck and nobody else at the table. Buck's eyebrows went up. Then he nodded once, slowly, with the gravity of a man accepting a mission. Charlotte Amalie received them with the warmth of a city that has been receiving visitors for 3 centuries and has made peace with the fact. The harbor road ran along the waterfront past rows of neat white buildings with red-painted tin rooftops, and behind them the green hills rose steeply with the pastel colors of 2 centuries of trade and storm and rebuilding. Jewelry was the dominant industry. The shop windows along the main walk blazed with it in the morning sun, and above the commercial streets, on the narrow hillside lanes, the markets. Sal DeLuca had the address in his shirt pocket, folded once, and he walked with the purposeful stride of a man who knows exactly where he is going in a city he has never visited. Connie walked beside him. She did not look back. She knew that Buck Calhoun and the rest of the company were approximately 1 block behind, at a distance that would become relevant at 11:15.
You smell that?
Salt water, sunscreen.
Behind that, there's a grill going somewhere. And something cured. I can pick up the cure from here, Connie. That's the market.
Your nose has never, in 39 years, failed to find sausage in a foreign city.
It is a gift. I don't question it.
1 block behind, at what Buck had classified as a discrete operational distance, the rest of Table 7 moved in a loose formation with the faces of people who were absolutely not following anyone. Marco Bellini had met them at the gangway in his off hours, dressed in plain clothes, carrying a canvas bag he had not yet opened. He walked beside Buck with the cheerful focus of a man who considers himself a natural actor.
11:15 at the gangway, precisely. The documentation is prepared.
You got the clipboard?
I got the clipboard.
Because she saw no reason to whisper. Do we have a name for the agency?
The USV Maritime Provisions Authority.
That is not a real agency.
There is today.
The market was on a lane behind the harbor walk, where the buildings leaned at a slight conversational angle toward each other, and the smells of coffee and dried herbs and salt air came together in a combination Sal DeLuca classified, without irony, as spiritual. The stall he had researched was exactly where it was supposed to be. Its proprietor, a compact, meticulous man of perhaps 65 who introduced himself as Senor Viga, had been importing quality Italian cured meats into St. Thomas for 22 years, and received Sal DeLuca the way one expert receives another, with direct eye contact, a nod of mutual recognition, and the immediate production of the finest item on the shelf.
This is Calabrese. You can tell by the, he listed, the firmness and the color, not too orange.
Direct from a producer in Vibo Valencia. 14 weeks. No shortcuts.
Vibo Valencia. Connie, do you hear this man? Vibo Valencia.
I hear him, Sal.
2 of these. And the soppressata, the fat one there. And what's that in the back? Is that a guanciale?
That is a guanciale, senor.
Sal DeLuca spent 31 minutes at Senor Viga's stall. In that 31 minutes, with Connie beside him maintaining the serene composure of a woman who has watched this exact scene on 3 continents, he acquired 2 loops of nduja, 1 soppressata of notable girth, a guanciale, half a wheel of aged pecorino romano, 1 tin of Calabrian oil-packed anchovies described by Senor Viga as not for everyone, and by Sal as for everyone who is correct, and 1 small jar of nduja spread on the grounds that it would be useful on the ship. He carried all of this in a canvas bag he had brought specifically for this purpose, because Sal DeLuca was a man who prepared. Connie, having purchased a small jar of local hot sauce for reasons entirely unrelated to the prank, watched him pack the bag. She waited until his attention was fully absorbed in fitting the guanciale around the pecorino, and then sent very quietly a text message to Buck Calhoun. It said, "He's done. 11:15. He has a guanciale." Buck's reply arrived in less than 30 seconds. It contained 3 words, all 3 were capitalized. While Sal and Connie made their way from the market toward the harbor walk, Sal's canvas bag now substantially heavier than his original projections, his spirits therefore substantially higher. The rest of Table 7 had spread through Charlotte Amalie in the way of 12 people who each had their own agenda and shared only a general direction. Buck and Loretta had found the fort above the harbor, small and red-painted and old in the way that Buck found deeply satisfying, and Buck had stood before it for a full 4 minutes without saying anything, which was, for Buck, the equivalent of a cathedral moment. Walter had discovered a shop selling antique marine instruments and was deep in a conversation about a brass sextant from the 1920s, which Alina had resolved to allow for another 8 minutes before redirecting with a mention of lunch.
Surveying the jewelry shops with settled Minnesota disinterest. Every second storefront is diamonds.
Yep.
My mother used to say, if a man gives you diamonds on a Tuesday, something happened on the Monday.
That's true.
She was a practical woman.
Daisy Holloway was sitting on a low wall near the waterfront with a watercolor postcard she had bought from a tourist kiosk. A pelican on a piling, very accurately painted. Watching the original pelican on a nearby piling with the contemplative attention she brought to anything that held still long enough to qualify as a sign.
That pelican has been on that piling for 20 minutes.
Maybe he lives there.
Or he's waiting for something.
Meanwhile, in a lane behind the harbor road, Marco Bellini had spread the contents of his canvas bag on a restaurant table and was briefing the 6 members of Table 7 assembled there with the focused satisfaction of a man who considers himself a natural director. The clipboard was genuine. The forms were genuine in the sense that Marco had produced them on ship letterhead. The lanyards were from the ship's New Year's Eve event, from which Happy New Year 2012 had been covered with a strip of white tape reading, in careful black marker, USV MPA. Nobody had asked what MPA stood for. Everyone agreed it sounded right. Marco Bellini was by profession a man of events. He had organized equator crossings for 600 passengers, managed a New Year's countdown in a Force 8 swell, and once off Bermuda conducted a formal talent show during which the ventriloquist lost his dummy overboard and had to improvise with a life preserver. He had not, until today, organized a mock customs inspection for a retired deli man's contraband salami, but he approached it with the same professional gravity he brought to everything.
All right, Rolls, Buck, your senior inspector. You do the initial stop. You have the clipboard. Do not improvise the form numbers. I put real numbers on there. They read better. Loretta, secondary inspector. Say very little and look skeptical. You know how to do this.
Ready.
Walter, forensic consultant. You have the reference material.
This appears to be the ship's cheese storage policy manual.
You can read it after. Stay in character.
Earl, Gus, perimeter, stand to the sides. Look official. Gus, in particular, you already look official.
Yep.
At the second table, Dorothy Lindquist, who had returned from the harbor walk and was sitting with a second coffee and the composed attention of an audience, raised one hand.
What do we do when he tries to argue his way out?
Mrs. Lindquist, he is a retired Italian deli man from Hoboken who believes all import regulations are a misunderstanding of God's intentions regarding salami. He will absolutely try to argue his way out. That is, in fact, the point.
Good. I just wanted to make sure we had enough time.
I feel mildly bad about this.
The smile of a man who has thought it through. He's going to love this story for the rest of his life. From the moment he figures it out.
That was, as it happened, exactly right. At 11:14, Connie DeLuca sent a second text message to Buck Calhoun. It contained one word, incoming. Sal DeLuca came down the harbor road at a comfortable pace, his canvas bag over one shoulder, his spirits in a condition that could only be described as profoundly satisfied. He had also, in a lane just outside Senor Viga's stall, found a vendor selling locally made hot pepper relish, and had acquired 2 small jars of that as well, which required a second canvas bag borrowed from the vendor. He carried both bags with the ease of a man, for whom this was not an unusual situation. Connie walked beside him. She had, over 39 years of marriage, developed the ability to not look at things that were about to happen to Sal with a naturalism that would have impressed any theater director, including the one currently positioned near the Harbor Road lamp post.
You know what I'm going to do with the guanciale? I'm going to ask Antonio. I'm not asking him to cook it, just asking if there's somewhere on this ship where I could, hypothetically,
Sal.
warm it slightly. They have small appliances on ships. I've seen it in
Sal.
the nduja. I can eat cold. That's fine. But the guanciale really benefits from heat.
Is that a checkpoint?
What? What is that?
At the Harbor Road junction that led to the gangway, 30 feet ahead, stood a folding table. On the table, a clipboard, a printed form, and 2 lanyards that said USVMPA in careful marker. Behind the table stood Buck Calhoun in his good button-down shirt, and Loretta, who did not need to prepare any additional skeptical expression because she arrived pre-skeptical about most things. To the sides, Gus and Earl, arms crossed, flanking with authority, Gus with the deadpan solidity of a man who has successfully silenced an entire county fair, Earl with the calm dignity of a physician in a difficult meeting. Daisy sat on a nearby wall with her pelican postcard, retained as a prop. Sal DeLuca stopped walking. He tilted his head at approximately 12 degrees. He said,
What is this?
Buck Calhoun stepped forward with the clipboard, and whatever residual doubt might have existed about whether a Texan rancher in a good button-down could pass as a federal maritime official evaporated at once, because Buck Calhoun was, above all things, a man who committed.
Sir, USVI Maritime Provisions Authority, we've received a report of an unregistered quantity of Italian cured goods entering the U.S. Virgin Islands without a customs declaration. I'm going to need you to set the bags down, please.
Buck, what exactly is this?
Mr. DeLuca, are you aware that unregistered importation of cured meats into a U.S. territory may be subject to Federal Maritime Provisions Act, Chapter 7, Subsection 4?
Looking from Buck to Loretta to the lanyards, his expression moving through confusion toward something closer to comprehension. That is, first of all, that is not a real... What is the USVI MPA?
Walter Whitfield stepped forward from the side, the laminated booklet open in his hands. He had been reading it.
If I may, Section 3 of the Maritime Provisions Code addresses aged cheeses and fermented meats classified as...
Walter, are you part of this?
I am the forensic consultant.
Buck Calhoun, I want you to tell me right now, is this or is this not a real agency?
Sir, I'm going to need you to step toward the table.
Sal DeLuca looked at the table. He looked at his bags. He looked at Connie, who was examining something in the middle distance with intense artistic interest. He set the bags down. He knew at some level what this was. Sal DeLuca had survived 39 years of marriage to a woman who thought 7 steps ahead, and he had developed an instinct for when he was being played. That instinct was, at this moment, very loud. But here is the thing about Sal DeLuca. He decided to play it anyway because he was, before everything else, a man who loved a good scene.
The measured dignity of a man lodging a formal protest. Fine. You want to do this? Let's do this.
The inspection of the bags proceeded item by item, with a thoroughness that the theatrical situation demanded.
Item 1, labeled nduja. This appears to be a fermented Calabrian pepper salami, approximately 14 ounces. Is this correct?
That is a cured Calabrian nduja of 14 weeks dry cure from a verified producer in Vibo, Valencia, and it is a legal and distinguished product of southern Italy, which is an allied nation.
Allied nation. Go on.
Item 2, soppressata, approximately 1 pound and change.
1 pound, 3 ounces. The change is 3 ounces of heritage.
If I may note, the dry cure process for a proper soppressata uses natural casings with a minimum of 4 weeks of aging. This specimen appears to have been aged considerably longer, which technically places it in the higher tier classification.
Walter cannot believe you are the most accurate person here.
I'm recommending this item be held pending review.
Pending review? It is a soppressata, not a detonator.
The guanciale came next, and Buck held it in both hands with the gravity of a man presenting evidence at a Senate hearing. Then the pecorino half-wheel, which Loretta examined with the skeptical composure of someone who has never allowed cheese to intimidate her and was not about to start. Then the anchovies, which Gus turned over once in his hands, read the label, and delivered a single word with the flat finality of a verdict.
Calabrian.
Calabrian anchovies in oil.
I want it on the record that those anchovies are packed in extra virgin olive oil from a certified Calabrian grove and represent no hazard whatsoever to the United States or its territories, economic or otherwise.
Noted.
By the time the small jar of nduja spread was produced, the last item, a supplemental purchase, there was a row of 9 Italian cured goods on the inspection table, arranged with the precision that Walter had imposed on them without being asked, because he was constitutionally unable to leave objects in the wrong order. Sal looked at the line. He looked at his wife. Connie was still examining the middle distance. She had been examining it for several minutes, and it was a remarkably featureless stretch of Harbor Road. There arrived the moment when Buck Calhoun, who was, beneath the entire official apparatus, a man who dearly loved Sal DeLuca, said the words he had been preparing since Connie had pulled him aside in the dining room corridor 3 days earlier.
Mr. DeLuca, based on the evidence before this authority, I'm prepared to classify your cargo as a significant unregistered importation. These goods will be retained pending...
And here his voice encountered a small difficulty.
Pending formal review and...
There was a pause of several seconds.
Disposition.
Disposition.
Who had been watching this proceeding with the expression of a man watching a play he has increasingly recognized as being about himself, and who had made the internal decision, many years of married life providing the preparation, to perform his role all the way to the final curtain, adjusted his shirt collar, and said, "I would like to make a statement in defense of my goods."
Proceed.
First, the nduja. The nduja is a living cultural artifact of the Calabrian people. Its origins go back at least 3 centuries. The specific variety I have acquired today comes from a producer whose family has been making it by the same method since 1891. And I know this because Senor Vega told me so, and Senor Vega has been doing this work for 22 years. This is not contraband. This is heritage. Second, the soppressata. The question of whether a soppressata of this quality constitutes a maritime provision risk is a question I would invite this authority to submit to the Italian government with my compliments, because the Italian government will have an opinion on this matter that will take several hours to deliver and involve at least 3 ministries, none of which will agree with each other. I will simply say, the soppressata has never harmed anyone. Not once in its entire history has a properly cured soppressata caused a problem that could not be solved by eating the soppressata.
There was a sound from behind the inspection table, a very short, very suppressed sound that was not entirely consistent with official proceedings. Loretta's chin moved approximately 3 degrees in Gus's direction. Gus's face did not change.
And third, the guanciale. I want it on the record that the guanciale is made from cured pork cheek, which is not, by any classification I have encountered, a restricted substance under any jurisdiction I have lived in, including New Jersey, which has opinions about what you can and cannot carry across a state line, and they have never once mentioned guanciale, not once. It is an oversight on their part.
Whose composure had reached the stage where maintaining it required visible effort. Mr. DeLuca, are you finished?
I would also like to note that the anchovies are packed in olive oil, which is, in the entire Mediterranean tradition, a preservative, a condiment, and a way of life. And that the nduja spread, which I would classify as a supplemental acquisition, not a primary one.
Sal, I need you to keep going for about 30 more seconds, because I need 30 seconds before I can say the next line.
What?
Please, the guanciale speech. 30 more seconds.
Buck went first. He put the clipboard on the table, placed one large hand over his face, and made a sound that was technically a laugh, but was more accurately described as a structural event. Walter went second, not so much broke as stepped sideways out of character, the way a building takes a moment to fall. His shoulders shook once, then twice. Then he produced his cocktail napkin and held it in front of his face for reasons no longer related to note-taking. Loretta lasted the longest. She held her form upright and her expression level for a full 4 seconds after Buck went, and in those 4 seconds she was the most professional person present. Then something warm and quick arrived in her eyes, and she put the clipboard down.
Sal, You were magnificent.
At the clipboard, at the lanyards, at Connie, who had her real smile on now and was not trying to hide it. When did you, to Connie, set this up?
St. Thomas. It was always going to be St. Thomas. Because you always find the market.
Looking at the full company, who were assembling now from their various positions. You were all... He looked at Gus. Gus, you're in this?
Yep.
The Donda. That was... And then the laugh came, real, the whole thing landing at once. The forensic consultant. Walter with the cheese manual.
The soppressata has never harmed anyone, Sal, in its entire history.
No, but I meant it. I still mean it. The soppressata has never...
The laughter that followed was the real kind, the kind that builds and comes back for a second pass, and leaves 12 people wiping their eyes on a harbor road in St. Thomas on a Tuesday in February. Marco Bellini emerged from behind the restaurant awning where he had been stationed for scene management purposes, wearing the expression of a man who has just directed the best show of the season and needs no one to confirm it.
He used Marco. You got Marco in on this.
It was an honor, Mr. DeLuca.
Something new in his eyes. And you texted Buck from the market while I was talking to Senor Vega. The hot sauce.
I bought the hot sauce.
You bought the hot sauce. I respect that.
The goods were returned to their rightful owner, itemized on the form in Walter's handwriting, which was neat and precise, and noted each item with its proper Italian name, origin, and approximate weight, because Walter had felt it was important that the documentation be accurate even if the authority was fictional. Sal carried the bags up the gangway with the same composed bearing with which he had carried them off 2 hours earlier. The differences being that he was now smiling, had shaken hands with Marco Bellini in the manner of someone awarding a prize to a worthy rival, and was wearing the USV MPA lanyard.
The lanyard. Can I keep this?
I had yours set aside.
Good.
On the aft deck of the Via Oceanus, in the shade of an awning above the Caribbean afternoon, the company settled into the particular comfort of people who have had an adventure and are now processing it at a reasonable pace. St. Thomas was beginning to recede, the ship would sail at 4, and the green hills of the island were still visible over the rail, bright in the afternoon light.
I want it stated, and I am saying this with witnesses, that if any of you ever try that again, which you will, I will be ready. I will have my own clipboard.
That's the spirit.
And my position on the soppressata stands, every word of it. The soppressata has never harmed anyone. That is a factual and historically verifiable statement.
The soppressata was also not declared at Fort Lauderdale boarding, and it arrived in your carry-on, and when the officer asked what you were carrying, you said, personal medication.
The nduja is medicinal. I believe that sincerely.
For what it's worth, the guanciale speech was the highlight. I have done actual stunt work where the preparation was less thorough.
I thought the forensic consultant was the funniest part. Walter reading the cheese storage policy.
I familiarized myself with the available material. The humidity regulation for aged pecorino is, I will add, entirely consistent with the conditions aboard the ship. The item is being stored correctly.
Walter, you are the best forensic consultant I've ever seen.
I want to say the Allied nation argument was quite good.
Who turned to look at Walter for a moment, something warm settling in his face. You know what, Walter? You are a true friend. Even when you were arresting my guanciale, you are a true friend.
The Via Oceanus sailed from Charlotte Amalie at 4 o'clock, running southwest on the course toward the canal. The St. Thomas Hills disappeared behind them in the late light, green, then purple, then a soft silhouette, then nothing, just the usual Caribbean darkness gathering at the edges of a sky still golden in the west. Table 7 had dressed for dinner with more than usual enthusiasm, for reasons that had nothing to do with dinner and everything to do with the fact that they had had a day. Antonio had, in his inexplicable way, arranged the centerpiece to include a small Italian flag, the kind that came attached to fancy toothpicks, and had placed it in the bread basket without a word, and had refilled the water glasses with the expression of a man who has seen many things, and considered this among the more satisfactory.
The centerpiece, the flag, and then Antonio. Antonio, did you know about this?
Mr. DeLuca, I know about everything that happens at table 7.
I believe that. I genuinely believe that.
Marco Bellini passed the table on his evening rounds and paused, and said, with the considered air of a man making a professional assessment,
I want to say the defense speech. I have been in this business 19 years. I have seen wedding toasts, anniversary tributes, and one birthday speech in the South Atlantic that went 28 minutes. The soppressata defense was top 3.
Marco.
Anytime, Mr. DeLuca, anytime.
The nduja had somehow made its way from Sal's bags to a small plate on the table, thin-sliced, arranged on rounds of toasted bread, and Sal had not asked how this happened, and Antonio had offered no explanation, which was exactly the kind of wordless hospitality that Antonio had been practicing for 4 decades. There was a moment, somewhere in the middle of the entree course, when all 12 of them were eating in the easy, comfortable silence that is only possible between people who have been through something together, even if that something was a fake customs inspection on a harbor road.
I want to say, I know we arranged this today, but that pelican was on the same piling again when we walked back to the ship. The exact same piling as this morning. That is not a coincidence.
Nope.
I think the pelican was a witness.
To the finest customs proceeding in the Caribbean.
To the USVI Maritime Provisions Authority.
They raised their glasses.
And to the forensic consultant.
I stand by the cheese humidity findings.
The laughter that followed was, in the opinion of Antonio, who had been refilling water glasses for 40 years, and had been in the presence of most of what the world had to offer across a dining room table, one of the best sounds he had heard on a ship since he was 26. He said nothing, because Antonio's opinion was expressed through service, but he poured the water with a particular care. Outside, the Caribbean was dark now, the ship making her steady way southwest, the stars of the tropics appearing one at a time in the clear sky overhead. The Via Oceanus had a few more Caribbean nights ahead before she turned toward the canal and whatever came after. Plenty of time, plenty of everything. Next time on Fun Cruise, the ship is well into the Caribbean with the canal ahead. And a beach in a bright bay has reminded a man at table 7 of a different beach 39 years ago on a desert film set in 1973, where he met the most furious, most magnificent, and most surprisingly loyal 600-pound camel in the entire history of stunt work. His name was Steve. This is a love story, mostly. If today gave you something to smile about, share it with someone. Find Fun Cruise wherever you listen, leave us a review, and tell us, what would you defend the way Sal defended the soppressata? What is your guanciale? Tell us in the comments, we genuinely love to know. We'll be back soon. Same table, same ship. The Via Oceanus keeps moving. Fun Cruise is an original audio story. New episodes whenever the ship is ready. Thanks for sailing with us. Thank you for sailing these miles of our cruise, along with our characters. See you in the next port. To be continued.